Hello, and welcome to an Ottawa County Parks virtual program. Today's topic is frogcicles, wood frogs, and winter. So it's always interesting to dig into how a creature gets its name. What's in a name? Do we mean a wooden frog, a frog made of wood? Well, let's dig into that a little deeper. If we take a look at wood frog and where it comes from, we have to dig into the Latin name, Lithobates sylvaticus. Litho meaning stone, and bates meaning one who treads, so one who treads on stone. Do we mean rock climbing frogs? Well, not quite. So what about the rana? Well, rana means true frog, so it's in the family Ranidae, and Lithobates is a subgenus of the Ranidae. And sylvaticus means things pertaining to a forest. So there's where your wood comes in. Sylvaticus, things pertaining to a forest. You know, thinking on that sylvaticus, things pertaining to the wood, it helps to know how to identify. And wood frogs have this wonderful camouflage that blends in to that forest environment. They're small, so size 1 to 3 inches, and they have a pretty dark mask. Most frogs in Michigan aren't going to have that mask, so that's a pretty good identifier that you've got a wood frog. And then take a look at that white lip. Do you see that in the picture? And then also add in, there's some banding on the leg, especially the hind legs. If you look closely there, you'll notice some dark banding. And then there's also these lateral folds. And what we mean by that is if you take a look at the back of the frog, do you notice that kind of lighter line, that fold running from basically just behind the eye all the way to that back hip? That's what we mean by the lateral folds, the folds on the side of the body there. And then wood frogs kind of come in this various color scheme, but they're all going to have this black mask. But they can range from gray to brown to even pink, like that lower right picture. And while we're at it, let's take a look at male versus female. So in wood frogs, the female does run larger in size. And if you take a look at the picture, you'll notice the female is on the bottom. And she's quite a bit larger than that male that's clasping her around the chest. And the males have this unique adaptation that they develop during the breeding season. They grow enlarged thumbs, which allow them to grasp the females better during amplexus. We'll talk a little bit about amplexus later on in the talk. But note that the males do have that longer set of thumbs. And then also there's a little difference in the northern wood frogs as compared to southern wood frogs. The northern wood frogs tend to be a little darker in color, running on that kind of brown, gray-brown stage. What a creature sounds like is also an important clue to its identification. This time of year you may hear multiple different types of frogs calling in your local wetlands, from spring peepers to wood frogs to maybe even leopard frogs as the season continues. Wood frogs are going to be the ones that sound a bit like a duck quacking. That may be a stretch for your imagination, but I would like you to pay attention to that quality. It does have that quacking sound to it. Let's also take a look at a wood frog as it's actively calling. So you know what you're looking for if you have the fortune to have local wetlands nearby. Also pay attention to some of those identification clues that we pointed out earlier. Take a look for that mask, that white lip, the banding on the legs, those folds on the body. Pay attention to those because after the video, we're going to have a little bit of a quiz. All right, I hope you were paying attention during the video to those identification clues, because now we're going to quiz you on them. On your screen, you're going to see 4 different pictures of Michigan frogs. And at the end, I'd like you to call out to your family or try to guess which one of the 4 is the wood frog. And I'll reveal the answer in just a moment. Is it this one? How about that one? There's some clues there that might trick you. Is it the 3rd one? How about this 4th one? Which one did you pick? Well, our answer is the one on the bottom left. That is our wood frog. You see that black mask, that white lip, the banding on the legs. Now, I know the picture in the upper left might have been a little bit tricky, but that one is a spring peeper. There's a bit of an X on the back. And then the first picture that popped up, so that bottom right, that one's all speckled. That one is a northern leopard frog. And then the upper right is actually a chorus frog. Notice that it kind of has a black mask, but it runs all the way down the side of the frog. So if you picked that bottom left frog, good job. Give yourself a virtual high five from me and the crew here at Ottawa County Parks. And now let's see if you can use your observation skills to find our friend the wood frog. Take a moment and study the picture. Where is the frog? There it is. Since you did such a great job on the last photo, let's see if you can find the wood frog in this picture. Remember that they blend in very well to their foresty background. They match the color of the fallen leaves quite well, so you might have to look a little harder in this picture. There it is. Not bad. Well done. All right, let's keep moving. So let's take a look at what makes the wood frog so special. Take a look at this range map. What do you notice about it? Where do we find wood frogs? Well, we find them up in the far north. So look at these northern states, so Michigan, Ohio, Illinois, Indiana, but also look farther north. We can find the wood frog up into Canada and even Alaska. You've got to be pretty hardy to survive up in Alaska, especially if you're not a creature that has thick coats of fur or layers of fat to protect you. And most animals hibernate during cold winter months, do have those capabilities, as well as those that are out and about during those months. So clearly these frogs live way up in the far north, and they seem to be lacking that fur and that fat content that allows them to hibernate in the same way that other animals do, which is pretty unique. So they don't actually truly hibernate, they freeze, and not quite solid, about 60%, which is enough to stop their hearts from totally beating and blood from flowing through their bodies. And then when spring comes around, they thaw. Seems kind of weird. How does that work? Well, in their cells, they develop cryoprotectants. These cryoprotectants essentially protect the frog from freezing solid. And the process is kind of unique. So your typical cell has a bunch of water in it. And as a frog prepares for that freezing for the winter, they go through a very systematic process. In early autumn, when the temperatures drop to freezing at night, but thaw during the day, the frogs follow a very similar pattern. This allows them to convert glycogen stored into their liver into glucose. Since they don't completely thaw during the day, much of that glucose released remains stored in their bodies, specifically stored in their cells, which pushes that water out of the cells and into the spaces in between. And by the time winter rolls around, most frogs have gone through a 10 to 15 freeze-thaw cycle, which allow them to accumulate large amounts of glucose inside their cells. So remember that water is in between the cells. And this acts as a cryoprotectant. So typically, when a living being, including us, are exposed to sub-zero temperatures for a long period of time, our tissues try to suck water from our surrounding cells, which causes the cells to get dehydrated and eventually die. So think frostbite. If you get severe frostbite on your finger, you may lose that finger because the cells have died. This phenomenon is kind of similar to a potato and salt experiment. So if you put a potato in salty water, really salty water, guys, the potato kind of shrivels up because all that water that's inside the potato moves to the higher concentration of salinity, the salt water. But if you added a bunch of salt to the potato, it would retain its water, so kind of keep it inside, which is pretty unique. And then the frog freezes, thaws, and repeats. So we get ourselves a frogcicle. Now, are there human implications? There are certainly potential benefits. And scientists are studying these, looking into ways to transport human organ transplants more safely. So who knows, some of these benefits may apply to us in the future. You may also be wondering where you can find a wood frog here in Michigan. Well, the woods are a good place to start, but even more importantly, look for vernal pools, those ponds that are only around seasonally, especially in the spring after the snowmelt, and may persist into the summer. But by fall, typically they're gone. Wood frogs require these because they often don't have fish in them, and fish are a major predator of the wood frog. That same vernal pond is really important for the wood frog life cycle. It's where they breed. And wood frogs will breed between the months of March and May, and from there they'll lay their eggs also in that vernal pond. And the process is a male will actively search for females, but they're unable to tell males from females by sight. So males will embrace other frogs regardless of gender and release those not large enough to be females full of eggs. If he happens to grab another male, that male will let out a loud croak to be released. And what the male does, if he finds that female that's full of eggs, he'll grasp her around the chest, just under the armpits, and hook those really large thumbs that we talked about earlier together to hang on. And she'll move around until she finds a spot that she wants to lay her eggs, or release her eggs. And once she releases her eggs, usually on some sort of stick or leaf litter, he'll release his sperm to fertilize those eggs. So let's take a closer look at that life cycle. Remember I mentioned those eggs. So a female will release 1,000 to 3,000 eggs and attach them to some sort of solid object, whether that's leaves or sticks, and all the females try to release them roughly in the same area. It's some sort of predator avoidance technique, because the predators can't eat all the eggs, hopefully. And the eggs at the center of the egg mass have the best chance for survival. If they happen to make it to 9 to 30 days, they hatch into tadpoles. From there, over time, they'll develop into these interesting little half frog, half tadpole. So they've still got that tail, but they've grown legs. And then from there, they'll start to lose that tail before they turn into a fully grown or fully formed frog. For males, it takes them 1 year to 2 years to reach full maturity. A female, it can take 2 to 3 years. And frogs may only breed once during their life cycle. Their lifespan is 3 to 5 years old in the wild. And as tadpoles, they're eating mostly vegetation, so algae, leaf litter, that sort of stuff. But as they develop an appetite for more carnivorous type foods. So they're going to start eating in the forest centipedes, springtails, ants, spiders, beetles, even worms, whatever they can catch while they're out there. And while they're out there, they have quite a few predators, especially the young ones. So as they're swimming in ponds, adults tend to use those vernal ponds where there aren't things like fish, but there may be other aquatic insects that will feed on them, but they may also end up in ponds that do have fish. So fish are a primary predator. Turtles love tadpoles, leeches, as well as predaceous diving beetle larvae, that little guy on the left of this stream of pictures. Adult frogs also have predators. As they're out in the forest floor, things like garter snakes, raccoons, turkeys, all of those will eat an adult frog if they can catch them. So frogs also face danger from from us humans as well. Whether that's forest clearing, so those upland forests they call home during the majority of the year, or even building a road in between that forest and that vernal pond where they mate. If we do that, they have to cross those roads, and wood frogs, as well as other creatures, could die by the thousands on those roads because we don't always see them coming as we're driving by at even 15, 20 miles an hour. It can be hard to pick out a frog. They're pretty small. So with that, how should I handle a frog if I do find them? Let's visit that here in a moment. So if I do find myself a wood frog, when and where are the best places to find them? So when is going to be that springtime when they are visiting the vernal ponds and they're the most obvious to us? Where, obviously, is vernal ponds. Time of day, though, wood frogs can be out and about during the daytime, but it can also be a good time to find them as we get towards dusk or in the morning as they're just waking up. They tend to be pretty vocal about those times. Also, how? How could I handle one? Well, it's best to just observe them if at all possible, but if you do want to handle a frog, be gentle. Keep it short and make sure that you have clean hands. So that means no lotions, no soap residue, no hand sanitizer, none of that on our hands, because remember, frogs actually do breathe through their skin. So all those chemicals that are on our hands can harm the frog. So if we keep it gentle and keep it brief, keep our hands clean, and return it to where we found it, those are all good things. And if we want to find some frogs in our own county, we have a couple of suggestions for you. So Grand River Park is a great place to find wood frogs. There's several ponds to look in. Crockery Creek Natural Area, Hemlock Crossing Park. So if you've been out to the Nature Center, you might have visited that front meadow where we have a boardwalk over a pond out there. That's a great place to look for them. Paw Paw Park West, down in the Holland area, is another wonderful place. There's a lot of wet meadow down there, vernal ponds, seasonal flooding areas where you can also find frogs. Now, that being said, I also charge you to look in your own neighborhoods. You might have some luck finding some frogs there. So keep your eyes out as you wander through your neighborhoods during the next few weeks. So if you find yourself out and about and you're looking for some more resources to help you identify frogs as well as other creatures that you might find in your own neighborhood, here's a couple of resources that might help out. So Amphibians and Reptiles of the Great Lakes region is a good guidebook for frogs, salamanders, snakes, turtles that we can find in our area. The Michigan DNR website, so www.michigan.gov/DNR, and if you click Wildlife and Habitat, that will help you out. The Michigan Society of Herpetologists, www.mishherp.org. Herping Michigan blog, that's another great one to look up, as well as the Michigan Herp Atlas, which will kind of give you an idea of where to find different reptiles, amphibians within the state of Michigan. And with that, that concludes our program for today. Thank you for tuning in to a Ottawa County Parks virtual program. Expect to see some more of these as the days continue. There are some upcoming over the next couple weeks. There's a woodcock program coming up, lessons from 5 seasons as a park ranger. There's some top times. So please tune back in if you found this interesting. We'd love to hear some feedback. Thanks for tuning in. Have a great day.